Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful mental model from former poker champ Annie Duke's book, Thinking in Bets. It's basically a guide for making way smarter decisions, especially when you're facing an uncertain future, and you just don't have all the facts.
All right, to really get this idea, we've got to start with one of the most debated, replayed, and just jaw-dropping moments in all of sports history. Okay, so picture this. It's the 2015 Super Bowl. The Seattle Seahawks are on the 1-yard line, seconds are ticking away, victory is right there. The obvious move, right? The only move, everyone thinks, is to run the ball. But instead, Coach Pete Carroll calls for a pass. And it's intercepted. The game is over. Just like that, the Seahawks lose. The media just explodes, and the verdict is swift and brutal. It was the dumbest, most historic blunder ever.
But here's the question. What if that gut reaction, that intense focus on the terrible, terrible outcome, what if that's the real mistake here? What if judging a decision only by how it turned out is completely backward?
Well, this brings us right to the core idea of the book. It's a sneaky cognitive bias that gets all of us every single day, and we usually don't even see it happening. Poker players actually have a name for this trap. They call it resulting, and it's our brain's lazy shortcut of tying a decision's quality directly to its outcome. If the result was good, we think, wow, brilliant decision. If the result was bad, then the decision must have been awful. So the key is to pry these two things apart in your mind. Decision quality is all about the process. It's about what you knew and the information you had at the time. Outcome quality, on the other hand, is that process plus a huge dose of luck, which can be good or bad. You can have a fantastic process and still get a terrible outcome. I mean, think about it this way. We all know this, right? A drunk driver who somehow gets home safely, nobody thinks they made a good decision. We all know they just got incredibly lucky. It's so obvious in that context. And yet, we apply that same flawed logic to our careers, our money, and our lives all the time.
So Annie Duke tells this story about a CEO she was consulting. And this guy was just torturing himself, convinced that firing his company's president was the worst decision he'd made all year. And why? Well, because the outcome, the result, was a total disaster. Sales fell, finding a replacement was a nightmare. It was a mess.
But when Duke had him actually walk her through his process, a completely different picture emerged. You see, he had clearly identified the underperformance. He tried to fix it by hiring a coach. He even considered other options. He had every reason to believe he could find someone better. His process was solid. He was just a victim of a bad outcome. He was resulting.
So why is this our default mode? Well, it's because our brains are built for speed, not always for accuracy. The psychologist Daniel Gilbert discovered that we're basically built to believe things instantly. We hear something, and step one is we automatically accept it as true. It's only later, if we have the time or the motivation, that we might go back and actually question it. Okay, so if our brains are kind of hardwired to fall into this trap, how do we fight back? How can we retrain ourselves to make more rational choices?
Duke gives us this incredibly simple but really powerful little tool. Just introduce the question, "Wanna bet?" into your thinking. Now, this isn't about actually gambling. It's a mental circuit breaker. It forces you to pause, slow down, and switch on your more analytical brain.
The moment you ask yourself, "Wanna bet?" your brain just automatically starts checking your own belief. You start instinctively running through a checklist like this. You move from that hot, emotional certainty to a much more honest assessment of what you really know, and more importantly, what you don't know. And this little wanna bet trigger leads to a much bigger shift in your mindset. It forces you to get out of that black or white, all or nothing thinking. It helps you see that you're almost never 100% right or 100% wrong, because the world is just a big, messy spectrum of probabilities.
So instead of just saying, "I'm sure about this," you can try saying, "I'm about 70% sure." Just that tiny tweak forces you to look uncertainty right in the eye. You're explicitly saying, "Hey, there's a 30% chance I'm wrong here." And that opens the door to actually learning.
And there's a huge psychological win here. It is so much less painful for our egos to adjust a percentage, to say, okay, I was 58% sure, but with this new info, I'm more like 46% sure, than it is to make the leap from I was right to, oh wait, I was totally wrong. It makes us way less defensive and much more open to changing our minds, which is really the whole point of learning.
And when you really embrace this mindset, you start to see that it's about so much more than winning one argument or getting one decision right. It's really about reframing the way you approach life itself.
Because when you get right down to it, almost every important decision we make, what career to pursue, who to marry, where to live, is a bet. It's a choice you make with incomplete information about a future you can't predict, and you're always risking something valuable, whether it's your time, your money, or your happiness.
The legendary game theorist John von Neumann absolutely nailed this. He said that life is not like chess, a game of perfect information where the most skilled player always wins. No. Life is much more like poker, a game of incomplete information, hidden cards, bluffing, and a whole lot of luck.
This leads us to a really humbling number. And to truly live this mindset, you have to get comfortable with the fact that even if your process is world-class, you're still going to lose a lot. In fact, it's something professional poker players live with every single day.
Get this. Even the absolute best poker players on the planet, the masters of this craft, will end a full 8-hour day of playing, having lost money over 40% of the time. They succeed in the long run not because they win every hand, but because they stay focused on making good bets, again and again and again, even when the cards don't fall their way.
And that is the ultimate takeaway here. The goal isn't to be right all the time. That's just an impossible and exhausting way to live. The real goal is to become a better navigator of uncertainty, to be someone who's always learning, always updating their beliefs, and always focused on improving the process, not just agonizing over the results. So, the next time you're facing a big choice, ask yourself this question. Am I just trying to be right, or am I trying to make the best possible bet? Shifting your focus from the outcome to the process, well, that changes everything. And that's the real power of thinking in bets.